Well, g'day, I'm Jono Brake. I'm here with Mark Phillips, USA, France, and today we've got an American in Australia, the man that gives me hair envy. And he's quarantining in Australia. Daniel Johnsen, welcome, mate. Really good to have you here. And so this is our weekly Fireside chat. We did miss last week's, unfortunately, but this is a great way to be back. Daniel is quarantining after being in the US on an emergency trip and is now spending 2 weeks in a hotel in Perth in Western Australia, the most remote capital city in the world. And so welcome, Daniel.
Thanks. Welcome to my 71 square meter hotel room.
For 14 days, right?
For 14 days. It's me, a bed, and I was smart, and I brought my Roku to hook up to the TV to stream.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you got your clothes on, and so that's really good. And
at least a shirt for all you know. So.
Yeah, the rest doesn't matter. Just don't drop the camera. But Mark, do you want to just take it from there? Just want to introduce.
Sure. Daniel, welcome back to Australia. It seems like that US-Australia link has been well used by you in the last, say, five or so years. We met doing a startup weekend in Townsville, North Queensland, 5 years ago, something like that.
September 2017? 2016, September 2016.
16, 4 years ago. There you go. You'd been involved in heaps of these startup weekends around the US, and were starting to explore outside of that, if I recall. And somebody said, why don't you do one in Australia? And the hand went up faster than anybody I've ever seen, and you were down under.
That's not exactly how it worked. So the funny thing about that is one of the interesting things that you can do is you're emceeing this particular event is as you close out this 54 hours of people talking about business ideas and seeing how much work they can do in those 54 hours. As the moderator MC, you tell them what to expect next. And so one of the things that I ask people to expect next is, hey, you're going to get a survey. Tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly. Tell us how we did. Made a plea, and I was doing this for about a year, is I had everybody say, I told them I was being open and honest. I was like, hey, I really want to go to Australia. So if there's any way on that survey, you can say, be sure to send Daniel to Australia, put it on there. And then after about 4 or 5 months of that happening, the team at Startup Weekend, they were like, why are these all coming through? And I told them, and so there was somebody wasn't able to make it from the western side of the U.S. to go there. This Townsville specifically wanted a U.S. person, and I'd put my name in, and they said, nope, you'll never go. And then that person had to drop out, and 2 weeks later they said, surprise, do you want to go? And I'm like, tell me the airport I show up at. And then little unbeknownst to me, I go to Townsville. It's hot, by the way. But yeah, really, really great start to a really fun relationship with Australia.
Yeah. So Townsville's right there on the Tropic of Capricorn, for anybody looking at the geographic map. So it's usually hot, and even winter is usually quite pleasant. We met there. I had just started. No, I hadn't. I was sort of completing a lap of Australia at that stage, and had been doing startup weekends around Australia, and came in to mentor and judge actually at that one, and it was by far the best startup weekend that I had attended. And
you're welcome.
We were down in Mackay, the next city, about 4 hours drive away. About a couple of weeks later, and actually we're just opening up our co-working space. We're painting the walls, and the president of Startup Mackay said, "Oh, we need a presenter. Who do you reckon we should get?" And I said, "What's your budget like?" He said, "Oh, we got shitloads of money." I said, "I know this guy in America." So I jumped on the phone or text you, and you were going to bed.
You tweeted. You actually tweeted.
Okay. And you said, "Yep, I'm into it." And you committed on the spot. Somebody wanted you 2 hours later. You had to say no, and you're back on the plane to Australia within a month of just leaving.
Yep. That was, yeah, no, you reached out in October, and then November is whenever that event was. So yeah.
Yeah.
But do
And
you remember I made a request of you? I said, sure, I'll come back, but you have to book me out for 30 days, just so I could see more of Australia. And through some connections you pulled with Advanced Queensland, which is the entrepreneurial arm of the Queensland state government here in Australia, they gave us a little bit of money for the fuel and for some food and some nibbles on the way, and then we just
Good on
went
'em.
out there and yeah, I said one thing I do whenever I travel in every city is I leave one thing undone. And so the first trip to Australia, I left undone um, sleeping on a beach in Australia. And then that second trip, I left driving in Australia on the list. So it would give me a reason to come back. And Mark, you were able through somebody had a swag, which for those that are listening in the US is or elsewhere, everywhere outside of Australia, is like a personal sleeping bag tent that nearly every Australian has at least one, if not more. And I come and Mark throws me the swag and he's like, here, you're sleeping on the beach. And then after the weekend, he takes me to a place that's pitch dark. He's like, there's your swag, walks me to the beach. He's like, just sleep on the beach. It was great until about 5 o'clock in the morning, whenever the sun starts rising, which it really does, and it's bright. And I'm like, I got to go. I can't sleep in this. And then I'm walking back across the road to Mark's partner, Linda's dad's house. And then I see these signs. And it's like these ubiquitous, they're everywhere, crocodile warning signs.
Oh.
Don't worry, you'll be eaten. And at this point, I've slept just in a canvas bag. I'm seeing these signs, and I'm like, he's going to kill me. He wants me to be taken by a crocodile. And sure enough, go back. Everybody wakes up doing morning coffee. I'm like, Mark, what are the signs about those crocodiles? And he's like, oh, they're only 2 kilometers north. And I'm like, these things can swim in the ocean. Like 2 kilometers whenever they go around the entire Horn of Australia is nothing. So thankfully I wasn't taken that time by a crocodile, but
No. Well, it obviously scarred you enough to keep well away from the country. You never came back until about 6 months later.
Yeah.
And so we met some people while doing a rapid tour of Queensland, all the outback areas, all the startup hubs that were just getting started at that stage, just the ideas. We met some people, you established a relationship, and within a few months, you were back in Australia on a 12-month or a 2-year agreement, a contract, I think.
Well,
there we go. And you've been in Australia now for pretty much all of 4 years, running, helping, advising, guiding startup programs, incubators, accelerators, you name it, nationally.
Yep, that's sort of the claim to fame, and it's been fun. So there's a fun thing about Australians that I think they're pretty innovative, but where they need a little bit of coaxing, and the U.S. term, we don't coax people, we just push people toward taking action. But the Australians aren't that forward, so you have to encourage and be like, you can do it. And then they start commercializing stuff. Show them a little bit, and then do some amazing things. So.
Culturally, it's very interesting. I personally love that US high energy, put yourself out there sort of style, but it's not usual in Australia, and certainly here in France, it's not usual. We practiced that ourselves recently, and somebody turned around, a French lady turned around, said through an interpreter, said, "I don't know what he's selling, but I want more of it," because they were not used to this high energy pitching that the US is just wonderful for. But, there is this time that an advisor and a guide and a mentor needs to, or just feels that they've got to stop guiding and jump over the fence and start another business. And you've reached that position recently, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm actually, while I'm in quarantine, I'm thinking about starting another one that recently impacted me in my life with the recent death of my mother that took me back to the U.S. on October 21st. So not that couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks, I think. So yeah, even with that problem, I've always got a problem solving hat on, and I'm working on working on one actively and about to at least go through the motions of a second one to see if there's an opportunity there, not to make money, but just to alleviate some of the pain and annoyances that I had with my mom's medical items, and now as we're closing out her estate. So I've got two. You get to pick whichever one or both of them if you want to talk about it. Doesn't matter to me. So.
So your mother was actually ill for a long time, and I recall you having long conversations with her, trying to assist her in medical and financial matters for a long time, and you found it difficult. What was it? Was it the distance between Australia and the US, or was it the systems? What was the apart from the emotional pain and family pain that obviously comes with a loved one, but you're talking more about systemic stuff, aren't you?
Yeah, so one, I think just culturally, if you compare at least the U.S. and I'm pretty sure Australia is very similar, compare it with some of the Nordic countries, the way that we age in place, age with the family and items is quite different. So it's not uncommon in some of the Nordic countries that there's a house where there's 3 or 4 generations and multiple families, and they all have their own item, but there's a massive kitchen, and family unit 1 has like Mondays to cook dinner, and Tuesdays somebody else is appointed babysitter. So they're sharing of duties. But in the Australian society, and what I've noticed definitely in the US, is that we're very individualistic, and houses, you have your small 3, 4, 5 family unit and you're done. But it also bleeds over to talking about end of life care, and whatever you're talking about end of life care, that's everything from, hey, what's your financial plan for retirement? Hey, what happens with your will, your children, your assets? But it also goes into that really awkward question around, hey, what happens if I'm in the hospital and I'm pretty serious, and there's a flow chart of probable outcomes. If you have to be on mechanical life-saving support, do you actually want that? If your heart stops for some reason, do you want drugs administered? Do you want CPR, which will break your ribs, and then you have to recover from this? Americans and Australians, it's out of sight, out of mind. We'll deal with that when and if it happens. But what I experienced with my mom is that we had talked about those things, but we didn't actually document and make sure that, or I wouldn't say that we didn't document it. I'm unable to find the documentation.
Oh, okay, that's
so
part of the issue.
So which is a different problem than not talking about it. And whenever I got word that she was in the intensive care unit, I executed on my part of the plan, which was leave Australia as fast as possible, which was complicated,
right,
by the pandemic and getting approval, and then you had very expensive one-way flights. And so you compound all this, and whenever I touched down, it just turned out that her condition was not recoverable, and or recoverable to a state in which she wanted to live. So I was forced with a decision of something that we don't talk about, which is a do not resuscitate order. I had to make a decision on that. I had to make a decision after talking with the medical staff. Hey, if these things happen, the test result says this, what is the next case? And that would have been easier if she would have had that documentation on file with the hospital. Her primary care provider knew about it, but did not have anything on file. And then in her paperwork, I had the prepaid funeral plan, which she was willing to go and sign the documents and pay for that, but didn't include this other document that I needed to make sure that I was following her wishes, in this life that I knew she wanted to live. So yeah, that's one item, which is going through it was pretty emotionally enriching. Now I'm able to, I mean, it's only been she died on October 26th, which is, what is today? The 11th. So you're talking less than 3 weeks.
Yep.
And I've come to terms with it, but if going through this experience, I can encourage a couple other people to have that honest conversation with their partner, with their friends, with their family members, document it, and then take other steps. That's okay by me. But I think there's an opportunity there to at least investigate and say, hey, if I've got this document, how do I make sure that my loved ones or my trusted healthcare proxy, if that's a friend, can make decisions on your behalf, how do they get notified? How do they have access to it? So I'm envisioning a system that you upload your checklist items. Not that I guide you how to write a will or living will, but I say, hey, this is the placeholder for this, placeholder for that. And then let's say if I ask Jono to be my healthcare proxy, well, once a month, once a quarter, he gets a text message or an email update. Hey, by the way, for quick reference, here's Daniel's healthcare directive. Nothing's changed. He still wants X, Y, and Z, and then go forward for that. Out of sight, out of mind actually doesn't help the survivors. I would have thought this would have been done before, but first research is the best thing you get is a non-fillable out PDF from like the United States National Kidney Foundation has a really good one, but that one you can fill out the PDF, but it's like, come on. But think about that. If you had
stuff around wills and things like that, but not the whole, like that's a fascinating idea because often it's the first time you face it too, right? There's just no idea. We've got all the complexities and anyone can take you for a ride in that time. So
like an interesting thing that happens, I play this series of mind building games, and it keeps track over time. I've been playing it for a year, and you can see my scores of occasionally there's a dip or something like that. But I was playing it while I was in her ICU room, and you can see the dip in the mental cognition and problem solving for like 2 weeks, and now I'm coming back up.
Wow.
So yeah, definitely a prime time. You've got to I had to make decisions on flights, on getting out of the country, places to stay within a pandemic. I couldn't stay with my family because on the odd chance that I got something in transit, the last thing I wanted to do was be responsible for infecting my 80-plus-year-old
when you got
grandparents.
here, you didn't even get a chance to spend time with your family. So you, because you weren't here long enough, were you?
So I arrived on the maybe Friday the 20th. I got to the hometown on whatever that Friday was. I'd have to glance at a calendar. But I wouldn't stay with my family until I had a COVID test. And if you're the incubation period, since it's 14 days, getting one on arrival was dumb. So I waited an entire week, which just happened to be after she had passed away. So yeah, I got into her town on the 23rd. She passed away on the morning of the 26th. So I got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday navigating all this. So.
Wow. Yeah. Hello, Daka.
Sorry,
you don't have dogs in hotels in Australia. So
No, can't do that. I wish they would. Well, I was thinking like how, I mean, I'm 24 hours into this COVID hotel stuff, and I'm just thinking like things that would make me happy. Being able to open the window would be great, fresh air. What if they had like a therapy dog that you could spend an hour with? And then it's like some of the research stuff is coming out that the dogs can carry COVID, and I'm just imagining the dog going room to room and infecting everybody. But if you look at what's going on in wherever there, Denmark, I think, is having to cull 17 million minks because there's a new strain of COVID that's infecting them, and it's already infected a couple other people. So they're culling them. One, who knew minks were still being used that way? And then two, what an activity to cull 17 million of them.
Yeah. So Daniel, tell us a bit about your story. So how does a guy like you come out of? You're a Kentucky boy, right?
Yeah.
How does a guy like you come out of small town Kentucky, and end up, launching a bunch of businesses, traveling the world? Because it's not just Australia you've been to. It seems like you've really lived the digital nomad life. In fact, I remember seeing a couple of posts from you just before you obviously hoofed it back to the US, and you were camping, car-based camping, and doing all that sort of thing by the beach. wasn't particularly envious, and but what's the journey been? What's got you to where you are today?
Yeah, I guess I've always been a person that wanted to fix and solve problems, and sort of that journey had me go through um, having an undergraduate degree based in Kentucky for the business side of computers. I'm a little bit of a tech nerd. I can code. I'm just not particularly good at it, and I've let those skills sort of drop by the wayside. But I'm really good. I know how the tech should work, and I can find the problems, and I know how to direct and hire somebody to fix those, and I can pay for them. So I've got that little skill set. Did a 2-year master's in business program with a focus in entrepreneurship. And one of the really cool things that they do in that program, and I think it still goes on, is you have the option to do business plan competitions. And so I did that. They let you travel around the world and present those. And I think that particular year, we with the plan that I was going after, we made it to the international. They call it the Super Bowl of business plan competitions, and we came third runner up, and we lost out to a team that was able to cure drug resistant MRSA. So like kills 30,000 people a year. Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Lost out to a team that could detect breast cancer from a woman's tears,
Oh my
which is
goodness.
pretty cool. And then the concept that I have was we were able to mix 3 ingredients in very specific ratios. It was a NASA technology that I licensed, and we were able to till it into heavily contaminated soils that had heavy metals in them, and it would make the metals inert, that they couldn't go below into the water table, and plants couldn't take them up higher. So a huge industry, but that was in 2008 whenever the capital markets did a big tightening. But I'm okay losing out to drug resistant MRSA pharmaceutical and to a product that can detect cancer from a woman's tears. Like, sign me up all day. I'll come in third to those. Like,
Yeah, they're pretty
so
amazing. Yeah.
they're saving lives, and I'm just making soil usable. A little bit of a difference. So, and after that, did management consulting. Yep. Go on, Mark.
I was just going to say, it is really quite amazing when you're working in the startup industry and the ecosystem, how many brilliant ideas and brilliant people you get thrown into.
Just, yeah. The
sheer ingenuity. And you just want to jump over the fence and go and help these people conquer the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, did the whole uni thing. That was fun, and then did some management consulting. Jono, we were practitioners in the same predictive index personality tool, and I think I've got Mark's results somewhere. I need to go back and find them.
So what are you?
Me?
Yeah. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember. Of course I remember. What do you think I
am? It'd be a high A or B. So
true, both true.
I'm a maverick, so I would have put you either maverick, captain, or persuader.
Authoritative. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've got that little cut. I've got that little cut back. I follow the rules. Mark, I think, is a persuasive. If I go back and remember. Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, I can't remember. There's a few of these around the place. They're actually really fascinating in terms of understanding yourself and being able to communicate with your team. So I can see they've stood the long test of time, because a lot of them have been around for more than 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Daniel, that was a bit of a side note there, but so management consulting.
Yeah. I don't have it in my email inbox. I'll find yours, Mark. I'm pretty sure I sent it to you. But we'll see.
Yeah, no, it'll be somewhere in there. I came out as a pilot in another one of those versions recently. So for those who haven't been following, I'm actually part of an incubator program here in France with one of my 10 companies. And they did this amongst the cohort recently. And that was the... you
guys did DISC.
Was it DISC? Yeah, it was DISC. I came out as a pilot.
Linda sent me her results. I didn't see yours. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was the opposite to Linda.
Yeah, there's a surprise. Yeah.
It makes it really interesting, but that's the whole idea.
Yeah. So sorry, Daniel. Yeah. So we kind of got off on a bit of a tangent there, but so you've kind of gone through the management consulting space. That was here in the US, obviously.
Yep. They're in Louisville. Yep. And North Carolina there. I got relocated to North Carolina. So
not a bad place to relocate.
So. Nope. It was pretty fun.
Yeah. So where did it take you from there? What's,
So after that, worked for a worked for a private equity based ed tech company, and then after that, I had a little bit of a personal problem with not problem makes it sound like it's a medical issue, but with going to the gym and trying to lose weight and build muscle, and I ended up finding I'm not the smartest person and mind the details a lot. And so if you've ever seen anybody walking around with those little shaker bottles of protein powder, if you happen to leave those in your Kentucky or North Carolina weather in July or August, they smell great. And by smell great, I mean they don't.
No.
And then had a little bit of
it's practically alcohol.
They definitely start fermenting and spoiling. Had a little bit of a desire to build a contraption. If you've seen the Coca-Cola freestyle machines, Mark, I don't think you've ever seen one, but they have them at Chipotle and Qdoba and McDonald's. Literally it was designed by Ferrari. Beautiful machine, touch screen, lets you select.
Order whatever you want.
140 different flavor pairings. You want Coke with cherry, vanilla, orange, lime, to whatever. And I was like, well, hell, if they can do that for soda, why can't they do it for pre and post workout drinks? So me being the non-engineer problem solver, tried to build one of these things, chatted in some gyms, wasn't able to do what I wanted to because the process just took way too long, is trying to learn how a motor worked. Then you learn all these other things. So a drawn out process. But at the same time I was doing that, came to Australia, met some people there, and I was like, you know what? I've had enough with this vending machine, making it, and I just hung out in Australia, and then that's where I've been. So I made a lot of mistakes, traveled around the world helping other people avoid some of the mistakes I've made, but find some real gems and some other humans that are doing some pretty beautiful things.
So you're doing a lot of obviously mentor and guiding and speaking, all sort of thing. Now, what is it that you love about that the most?
I love it whenever I find somebody that's interested in taking the next step. And I'm sure Mark and Jono, what you find a lot is that some people try to optimize for their accounting software, and they spend 6 weeks trying to decide the bank account and the accounting software. And I'm like, that's not going to bring you $1 more of revenue. Like, move on. Right. And so what I really try to do is help people get to whatever that critical success item is, and let's test that out as fast as possible. With the vending machine, for me, it was, will somebody walk up to this machine they've never seen before? It's charging a premium for powder that they could buy for 25% less and do it themselves. And would they swipe a credit card? In the first version of that particular machine, I don't know if I've told this publicly, but the credit card reader didn't actually work. So you could have used your gym membership card. You could have used a hotel card key, and all, because that, like, can we process a credit card? The answer is yes. We do that billions of times a day. That's not risky. The riskiest thing at that, and I'm a flow person. Like, what will kill this business? It was, will somebody trust the machine enough to take out their hard-earned cash, swipe it, and then drink whatever comes out? And like, it exceeded by 5 times the first day's revenue goals, and then it just kept on increasing after that. And then I started charging people. So
yeah. Then you actually connected it to their credit card. So.
Not eventually, it was, yeah.
Yeah. So what happened with that then?
It's currently in a storage unit. 5 of them are.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
So what? But now I could rebuild them in about 2 weeks with all the knowledge that I've got now, which is a year and a half or something like that. So
obviously a bad year to be doing anything with gyms, but they've only just started to reopen here in North Carolina. So I don't know.
But vending machines have been growing in hotel. So the hotel hospitality industry have been putting vending machines in everywhere because it cuts down on the guests having to interact personally with the hosts. So that's been a growth area for vending machines.
Yeah, anything that allows you not to interact with something else that another human has touched right now, it should go gangbusters. Even that Coca-Cola Freestyle machine, which was the inspiration for the machine that I built, you can now control it and pay for it from an app on your phone,
Yeah.
which is the next logical step. So yeah, it's just interesting things that you can do.
Yeah. So where are you at today? So you're, I mean, apart from in Australia, but what are the things you're working on? What are the things you're looking forward to?
Yeah. So what I'm working on now, and this is where it gives me a little bit of a pause that the stars and the timing didn't quite line up. Is right now, if anybody's got an Amazon Alexa or Google Home, I'm in the early stage beta of it's publicly available, but you have to request access for it. A product called Lolly, and what Lolly does is it makes it super simple for families to record stories, readings of books, or even songs, so that a kid can just ask Amazon Alexa or Google Home, "Hey Alexa, have Lolly read to me Little Red Riding Hood," and then out plays Grandma's recording of Little Red Riding Hood,
Yeah.
whatever it is. So, hey Lolly, tell me how Grandma and Grandpa met, and then there's Grandpa's rendition of, "Hey, I met your grandmother," whatever. So
Wow.
that's currently being done. Pretty fun with that. A lot of interesting items are popping through with that one that anyway, some back end stuff that isn't overly fun, but it's there. So
Yeah.
and
That's an
I'll
interesting addendum
You
to
talk
the
about
person we had
the
on the show a couple of weeks ago. And she was, you probably met Mickey, but she was talking about she does these personal memoirs for people, like as a book. They're kind of private. But
Yep.
yeah, it's it's almost like a technology add-on to that.
Yep.
Sorry, Mark, your question.
So Daniel, I was just going to say this concept sounds great, and it's been one of those good years to bring home the fact that your great grandparents, your grandparents may not be here for much longer, and we've got this latent technology which could be used to communicate with the younger age group. But you were talking about some back end issues. So this is often what happens as a startup. The concept, the 10,000 foot level concept sounds great.
Always works.
Doing, and then you get down to the detail, and it might be technical, it might be legal or business or control issues. Are you able to expand on some of those detail things that are now starting to chew up the time with Molly?
Good question, Mark.
Yeah. So with it, one there, I'm building Lolly in a very specific way. One, there's this big rise of no-code tools. So point and click, design something, execute it, very little or no code coding required. So it's built with 5 no-code technologies that just layer on top of each other. One for Alexa, one for storing, one for recording, one for some audio processing, and then there's a CRM on the back end. So each one has its own little nuances of what to do, what not to do. And so, for instance, one of the items that we're having to work around is if you use the UK or Australian English for the word color, and the kid says, the coat of many colors. Well, the Australian and UK, India, and some other countries, Alexa will try to match on the spelling of color, COLOUR. But the way my system is built, it's built in American English, which is COLOR, and you don't get a match. So they're saying, like, you don't know. And I have a US based Amazon Alexa account. So during testing, I never found this.
Yeah.
And so whenever I had some Australians start testing, they're like, "We know it's there, we see it," to all this other stuff. And it's like, oh, like that one took a little bit of time to figure out.
Hey, for the record, Daniel, I did hear you refer to A to Z earlier. I was very impressed.
Hey, it's a very conscious effort. So
not A to Z.
Yeah. So figuring some of that stuff out, because you can't actually the voice directions and what's said is transcribed or put into text format on the device itself. And then that text rendering is sent to your service. And if you try to do an exact match, and kids, and so like I actually never get the audio snippet, anything from the device itself. So it makes you have to think about all.
You never.
No, I never get the original audio request. Now, people record something through their phone with my service, so I get the original audio from that. But I don't get the original audio of the kid saying, "Hey, Mama, have Lolly read to whatever." I don't get that. So, and it's not in Amazon's roadmap either. So.
Interesting.
And there's like a whole bunch of those, like in the testing stuff. If you have a audio file and you just have an MP3 you can download from somewhere, and we were just using it as testing. Well, in the browser, it tests magnificent. It works. But whenever you then put that on a server and then try to pull it down and make it play on an Alexa device, you have to encode it in a very specific way. And it's not logical, and it's poorly documented what that file format has to be. So then you're like, oh crap, now I have to do that. And then we found a bug in a media player that we were trying to see what we had it recorded versus what it needed. And there was a bug that it gave you the last audio files information, not your current. And it's like, come on, guys. Like, and so you have all these issues, and you think, hey, this should be a 2-day project. But because you're encountering it, it just goes on for a very long time.
There's a lot of non-technical founders are going to discover this. You know, they've bought into the Kool-Aid. They've been hearing the world has never made it easier to start a business, and in many respects that's correct in some fields. But the level of technology, in my experience, has actually gotten way more complex than it has in many, many years. The nuances you've just been describing have never been greater. The interaction between different code bases has never been greater. Whether it's no code, with code, we pull pieces of code in from all around the world. We're doing a second development environment in our own space. I don't even have it working at the moment because there's one of 37 million code decks that is missing, and I don't even know which one it is.
Yeah.
How do we help the non-technical founder overcome these issues? You know,
I had a conversation last week with this, and I think as you're navigating these tools, or it could be you hire some hard coders anyway, you need to have a really good problem-solving hat, and you need to be able to document this happens this way in this path, but what I was expecting is it to go this other way, and whenever I try it this way, I get this result and get this other result. And I remember back whenever I was working for this private equity-backed ed tech company that was later purchased for $200 million, that someone was able to describe something, but I wasn't able to replicate it, which means I couldn't tell the programmers how to do it. And it only happened whenever you added 10 or more items to like this little tree that you were building. In my testing, I added 3, and I'm like, great, it works. What's the problem? They're like, and then they showed me it all, and it had to do. And if you're good at Excel, and this is, I was talking about how to recruit for somebody how to recruit for a 10-week how to build your product in no code item. And I think there's a strong correlation that if you know how the computer looks at data in Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets, how it interpret a number with a leading 0 versus text with a leading 0, or that you put in a postcode that has a leading 0, but it cuts off that 0 because you have it as a number and not as a text field, that will probably get you 70% of the way there. That if you can solve those problems in Excel, the rest of it will be easier.
That's
I think there's because it makes sense, because the computer is thinking in numbers and digits and sorting by it does everything by numbers. And so you've got to say, all right, if I were doing this in Excel, how would I do it? And I think these people that have a great command of Microsoft Excel can port over to no code and make their lives a lot easier. But if you can't even write a formula right now in Excel, it's probably a lot to overcome, and your mind doesn't think like the computer needs to think.
So does that then,
so that
does that then mean you've got to, I mean, you obviously look at someone. So let's say, for example, if I was starting a business, I'm not a coder at all, not a technical guy. I get technology. I love it. When people are talking to me about it, I understand what they're saying and I can communicate that way. So that would mean then, you know, would you be looking at co-founders or people that come alongside you, or just people who are just going to be your tech guys? I mean, how do you, because there's a lot of guys like me out there, right, that don't know code at all. They're not necessarily engineers and they've got a good idea. As you say, conceptually, everything works, right? And
yeah, so you've got a couple options. So one, if I were trying to work with somebody and teaching a 20% cohort, hey, this is the no code tools, the people I would admit first would love Excel and being able to manipulate and create beautiful things in it. Those would be my first tier of people. My second tier of people would be like, hey, you understand how the tech works, but you're not skilled enough to do an Excel formula. I would either put you through 4 weeks of a remedial, here's how it works, how to do that. Because if you understand, and like the easy example I go back to, because this happens in the US, in the Northeast states, the postcodes start with a 0.
Yes.
Well, if you have your postcode as a number, it doesn't like it and it gets rid of it. So you think, oh well, that's a number. Well, it's actually not a number. It's text that just happens
sends
to be
it to a random postcode in Australia, right? Because they're 4 digits.
Yeah. So you've got to think through this, or you've got bad data. But you really encounter those things if you're dealing with addresses of a big data set in Excel. You'll find that problem. You also find 20 other problems with how to manipulate a date and add and subtract a date. And if your mind thinks like that, you'll do great. So that's what I would do. If I were a non-technical founder trying to use some no-code products, I would take some of the boot camps that they offer, and most of them are free. Sign up for a $20 Udemy course on how to one guy has an amazing YouTube video of how to build Airbnb in 3 hours. And he's just walking you through. Click. And I think I've sent that to Mark, and I'm like, Mark, like, this is your next product. This guy is doing it. Now, is it 100% functionality of Airbnb? No. To the user, it looks pretty damn close. But the way that I was building Lolly is I've got a team of programmers that I typically use, and I said, hey, we're going to build this. Here's the overarching 10,000 foot view, but we're not going to code. We're going to use this code. So I paid those people through Upwork. They were coders, and I was like, hey, I'm going to pay for you to learn these tutorials, and we're going to build this together. And so I paid a technical person to use the tool set I wanted, so that we could both collaborate. So now we have about 22 hours coverage any day of the week on who can add things and change things, because it's built in this visual programming tool. So,
wow. Yeah. That's a very different way of looking at it. I mean, we've talked a lot about, right, Mark, in a lot of our conversations, we talked a lot about how you build your business, how you develop your team. I mean, today I've really appreciated this, because it's been very much about, okay, these are the pragmatics. This is the stuff you got to know, or at least you got to know someone who knows it. But it sounds like even for someone like me to get my head around it is at least to know the basics.
Yeah, I mean, they do courses. I did a webinar like this a couple of weeks ago, and we created a COVID check-in app in 15 minutes using these no-code tools. And it took the person's information, it alerted the restaurant, it kept a database of them, it timed people out, it sent a confirmation email, 15 minutes. Once you know what the system is doing. If you can create Microsoft PowerPoint, animations, and whenever I click on this, go to this other page, show this, don't show that, and master Excel, you're 90% of the way there with some of these no-code platforms.
The PowerPoint side's the user interface sort of side. Is that what you're
saying?
Right.
Yeah. So the particular tool that I use and advocate for is called Bubble, and it's Bubble, BUBBLE.io. And again, you can sign up for free. You can make your COVID check-in app if you wanted to, and use that. And the thing that they get you to do in these boot camps or these courses that you'll take is everybody makes a task management system. So you create a task, create a subtask, you mark it as a complete, do whatever due dates and items like that. And that encompasses probably 60% of the things that you'll have to do. So the no code tools are they're just three different items. And some of them are stronger than others. So the three items are, it's how does it deal with data? So think that's your Microsoft Excel. How do we store and utilize data? Another area is the way it looks. So think about that as your PowerPoint and the way you design something, point and click. And then you've got something called workflows. And that kicks off, hey, when this person puts in this data, then send out an email, then do this, do that. And if I were to wave a magic wand as someone I would work with to know the workflows, they would use a service called Zapier, Zapier, that lets you say, hey, when this one work thing happens, make this other thing in another program happen. So if you can manage Excel, deal with some advanced PowerPoint items, and know how these workflow tools like Zapier works, I would use that person hands down right now. But if you were lacking in those, I'd pay somebody to go through some of those Udemy courses.
Wow. That's very practical.
So it's workflow, it's data, and it's visual. And those are the three. So
yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Great tip. Great tip. Because you're doing it directly. You're not talking about it. You're actually doing it.
Yeah.
And you're doing it quickly. You've got your team and so forth, but you're being able to spit out these new products. It's a great way to test markets. It looks like you're going to do with another one or two products, and hopefully be able to gather a whole lot of early adopters before anybody else does.
Yep. Yeah. And if anybody's paying attention to this, if they want to sign up for a beta access or request it, they can go to read READ with WITH Lolly LOLLY.com. Read with Lolly, because Lolly's the product name. And what are we having kids do with their Alexa device? They're going to sit there and read with Lolly. So Jono, it sounds like you find some of my little hacks and approaches funny, well, interesting. So Lolly, which is the name for sweet.
Yeah, here in Australia.
In Australia. Like I'm not a creative person like that at all. So the first product name, and I still have the domain, I'm a very literal person. It's called Read and Record. Like that's literally all the product was doing, which a kid is not going to do anything with that. It's not memorable. So what I ended up doing is I used the service called Fiverr, Fiverr.com, gave a snippet of, hey, this is what the product will do. I need an app name. And I hired 3 people on Fiverr for $5 or $10 a piece and said, here's a synopsis. It has to be something a kid would say. It can't something be like xylophone that no one can spell. And it has to be 1 or 2 syllables. And then one of the 3 people for $15 came back and said, Lolly. I think it needs to be named Lolly. And I'm like, I showed it to a group of people in Australia. You are the king of the
simple hack, man. I love it.
He's the hacker.
That's not even the half of it. You should see the way I work with my virtual assistants. I have a Google Voice that I just read out a task and then it tasks them using some automation tools. So I'm walking down the street and I'm like, hey, be sure to ask Pearl to do this. Be sure to ask my other VA is Nice. Be sure to ask Nice to do this. And then it creates a Trello card, and then it tags them in Slack, and then they start working on it.
Wow.
So I'm not smart. I'm just very lazy, and I hate repetitive. Yeah, it's like the way that I make.
I think that makes you extremely smart. I mean, it's that's incredible that because you're just. I mean, it just proves you. The first question I ask you is why this? Why your journey? You just said I love solving problems, right? Yeah. I mean,
I hate repetitive work.
Today is just solving one problem after another. It's just like you can just see a simple solution to it, and that's quite unique because you know what it's like coming out of the colleges here in the US, and Australia is the same. Particularly if you come out with a business, an MBA, and you've done business planning, and all the homological theological discussions within business. And when it's so simple, it's like, well, I didn't spend 100 grand at college to keep it simple, right? So business gets quite complicated. I love this. I mean, for me, this is just down to earth, practical. Here's the problem. Let's solve it over here.
Leveraging what's out there.
So like, I'll tell you another fun one. And so I've got like 3 products I can work on while I'm 13 more days left in this quarantine. Not that I'm counting down and they,
when we get a news item, like all the lights in Perth went out on day 13, it's like, that was Daniel.
they actually give you this, you get a plan of hotel, you get day by day. Like, I'm already 3 days ahead. Like it says day 2, you're supposed to get a COVID test. Well, I had it today, so I'm a day ahead. So maybe they'll let me leave earlier, but I don't know. So, and it's funny, like they tell you on, what is it? Like on day 4, no, day 5, you should have a goal for the entire 14 days. And it's like, come on, guys. Like, I should have that on day 1. No, so Jono, here's another fun one I've got. And this shows you the power of work, just figuring out a way to get something done and across the finish line. So a product and service that I've found, or something that annoyed me, is I don't have that much money. And so I hate paying full price for something whenever I know it's going to be on sale next week or was
Never do it.
Previous.
Yep.
But yeah, so Jono, here we'll do some customer discovery for those that are paying attention. So you or your wife, whenever you go to the grocery store, how do you know what you're making that week to eat? How do you make that decision?
What we're doing to eat?
Yeah.
So you're talking. So we do a shopping list. We meal plan. Generally week in, week out, because we've had to do it a bit tight here in the US as well. So we meal plan, and then we buy to that meal plan.
Okay, and the meal plan, say the protein, the chicken, the beef, whatever's on there. How do you know if you're eating chicken or beef that week?
It's on the meal plan.
So are you price conscious? Like, if chicken's on sale this week, you have chicken meals?
No, we'll generally. I mean, we go to Aldi, so it's very consistent.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
yeah. Okay.
But that decision's pre-made, right? Obviously, it's not like Australia where you got 2 supermarkets and it's really expensive. You can compete, but yeah. So it's funny you just say this. We've just discovered that actually the steak we're buying at Aldi, we can buy it cheaper and bigger at Publix. And it's actually a better steak. And so that's the first thing we found. So then now we're going to Publix as well as Aldi. So, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the problems I've got on the back burner, the process is working. I just need to get out and start marketing it. For those families that do the meal planning and want to spend a little bit of time, but also want to save a huge chunk of money, what I do each week is go out and look at what's on sale, chicken, beef, whatever the vegetables are, maybe some canned items, and put together a meal plan that includes 3 breakfasts, 3 lunches, 3 dinners, and 3 snacks that are only made upon the items that are on sale that week at your selected grocery store. And then for $1 a week, or $49 a year, you can get as many of these grocery stores in your area delivered to you. So that's a process. It's done every Tuesday. The sales ads are active on Wednesdays, and so I'm sitting on those right now. But going back to here's how Daniel makes decisions in the world. I had this idea and I was working on it, and I was talking to some programmers like, hey, how much would it cost to go to Publix or Woolworth's website, scrape all the sales, and then make meals out of it, like a meal plan? And they're like, whatever they quoted out, they're like, probably 20 weeks of work and $100,000. And you know that all these grocery stores change their websites every 4 weeks, so it's like constant updates. So $100,000. Well, what ended up happening, I'm like, I did the process a couple of weeks myself. And then I hired a virtual assistant to see if she could do it. And so these guys were like, well, how are you doing it right now? And I'm like, well, I'm using Perl. And they're like, Perl, and Perl's like a 20-year-old scripting language. Like, it's old. It's older than Mark, which is saying something. And so they're like, that's crazy.
20. Jeez.
Yeah. And they're like, how in the world did you get Perl? Say that again.
It's off of mainframes. It is actually probably older.
Yeah, yeah.
It is very,
Yeah,
very
no, yeah, like I'm not joking. Like it's really old. They're like, how did you get a non-web technology to go out there and scrape? And I'm like, oh, you think that I'm scraping all these grocery store websites and doing all this other stuff and generating this stuff with Perl, which is spelled Perl. And I'm like, I'm not actually using Perl. My virtual assistant's name is Pearl, like the little, yeah. And like, if you do the calculations, what I was paying her, she can do one grocery store pretty fast. It would take 72 years to break even for $100,000. And I'm like, why would I code this out?
Yeah.
Why would I code it out and have to constantly update it whenever a human can do it? So sometimes if you peel back the layer on what's happening behind the scenes, still now all these AI things are still people that they're humans. You scan a receipt, it's dictating OCR that. Hate to tell you that, that's probably not a computer that's doing it. It's a human that's being paid 3 cents per receipt to digitize.
We were doing something very similar in cybersecurity, sort of 8 or 9 years ago when I was involved in that space, and we built a whole system that scraped sites like Alibaba and those sorts of things for counterfeit product. But yeah, same deal. I mean, it was processed by 20 odd people in an Asian country. And so it's very, you're right. It's very common. And it makes sense. And it's a good thing too, right? Because I mean, these are people who you're paying them, you're paying them good money. Like it might seem cheap to us, but to them it's good money. It helps them kind of climb the ladder. It gives them something to do. I kind of like that model. Yeah. Humans are still pretty good.
Yeah. And even as I was trying to travel and go back and forth to the US and going back to the other product I want to build to help people navigate what's happening with their loved ones before they die and after the death process. I was so overwhelmed that like I couldn't figure out flights, and I gave my VA, I've had a multi-year relationship with her. I'm like, look, I need to get back to Australia. I need to do it without spending $16,000. Can you help me out? And she just went to work, and I woke up the next day. She's like, here are your flight options. This one's the best. And we ended up booking that one.
Beautiful.
So VAs, I get decision fatigue a lot, and it's having someone else do the majority of the work, and then I just have to pick one really helps me out.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, look, we're going to have to wrap it up here anyway. We've been chatting for an hour. It's but it sounds like we need to have another conversation. There's a lot in there. I think you've given us such a really unique insight into this, particularly the technology business and the problem solving side of it. It's easy to say, well, I solve problems, right? Every entrepreneur says they solve problems, but you actually went into some beautiful detail as to how you do that. I love that whole thing with the Excel, the PowerPoint, and what was the third one?
Like an automation tool like Zapier.
Yeah, workflow. Yeah. And so, those sorts of things is very, very practical. So really appreciate it. And it's been great. I think it's the first time we've actually talked face to face too, Daniel. So who knows, one day I'll be able to be getting back to Queensland with Mark, and we may be allowed back in one day, but
it's hard and it's expensive. So be like to fly back. So
any parting words?
Go for it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll obviously get back to normal or some semblance of normal one day. But any parting words, Daniel, before we go?
One, happy to help out if you want to do another one of these, and if we want to show some of the tools like Bubble that I use, and I can say, hey, here's how you can design a COVID tracking app really fast. We'll just build one. We'll build in public. Two, if anybody wants to, they can hit me up on social media or whatever. All my stuff's out there, pretty accessible. Just be nice. And three, just build something. The biggest thing whenever I work with people is I need you to provide value to someone as fast as possible. Value is not driven by you picking your accounting package. Value is not driven by you picking your bank. Value is looking at someone and saying, hey, you said you had this problem here. I'm going to try to solve it. How do we do? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you get paid for it. So,
beautiful.
But yeah, if anybody has any questions on something, happy to happy to help out one way, shape, or
Well,
form. I'm here for 13 days.
well, I think that creates an interesting opportunity too, Mark, where, you know, we could look at maybe doing something like this live within the Sandtrax community. And
Well, we could
so,
do a Q&A session on the Sandtrax Club. Certainly there on Facebook. It's live.
Yep.
You know, Linda's probably on there right now. I don't have it open in front of me, but
yeah,
we've probably got questions coming in now. We could certainly get that straight away. Maybe we can schedule another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think yeah, nice and practical. We'll talk about that offline, Daniel. But to give you something to do for the next 13 days.
Yeah. So with the project that I'm going to be playing with, to help people create their personal document repository and share it with their trusted decision makers or family members, I'm actually going to build that in public. I'm going to go through interviewing a lawyer, a banker, an accountant, someone in the death services, so like a funeral director, and some of these stakeholders to see. And I'm going to interview somebody. We're going to choose it in public. The platform that we're going to build, what all these people say we should be building. So we're going to have our list of criteria driven by the experts that deal with this on a daily basis, because I only have three weeks of exposure to it. And I'm going to interview them in public. We're going to make decisions in public, create a roadmap in public, and then we're going to build it in public.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show all these different things and
you're a mentor, obviously, with Sandtrax, and so, you know, there's certainly opportunity for you to share that with our community. So get some of them involved and checking that out as well.
Let's get those links out there.
Yeah, definitely. We'd love to be able to help you share that out and get people involved in that. Anyway, it's time to wrap this up as far as Facebook Live is concerned. I'm Jono Brake. I've been here with Mark Phillips. Thanks, Mark, again. Daniel, it's been amazing. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your insights and look forward to continuing this. If you're watching right through here to the end here, obviously this is our weekly Fireside chat with Sandtrax. And so you can go and join the Sandtrax community on Facebook. And so that's free. You can connect with our group there. And then there is a paid version where you get access to people like Daniel, Mark, and myself in a slightly more intimate way. And you know, that's a paid version, but you can see that from inside. So please come along and join us. Enjoy the journey. Thanks, guys. It's been fantastic.
Thanks, guys. See you again.
See you later.